Hey guys, how's it going? Hope you're doing well. My name is Crown, and today I'm going to read you some very interesting stories that I hope that you're gonna love. And now, without further ado, let's go!
I'm not a car dealer or anything fancy like that. I work part-time at the local library, and my husband does construction work. We needed the money from the car sale to help cover some of the funeral expenses we were still paying off. I figured selling a well-maintained car would be straightforward, but I was dead wrong. I posted simple signs at the post office and the community board at the bank. The rules were crystal clear. Call to set up a viewing, no holds, cash only, and first person with cash gets the car. I thought I was being fair and transparent about everything. The first people to call were this couple. The woman introduced herself, and I'll call her Karen because, well, you'll see why. She and her boyfriend wanted to come look at the car on Sunday afternoon. I agreed and spent Saturday making sure the car was clean and all the maintenance records were organized. Sunday came around and they showed up right on time. I greeted them at the door and we walked out to look at the car. I showed them all the paperwork, the service records, everything. They seemed really interested and asked good questions about the engine, the tires, when things had been replaced. The boyfriend asked if they could take it for a test drive, so I handed over the keys. They were gone for about 20 minutes, which seemed reasonable. When they got back, they both seemed pretty happy with how it drove. That's when things started getting weird. The boyfriend asked if it would be okay if their buddy could take a look at it too. He explained that their friend knew more about cars than they did. I hesitated because I've been clear about my policy, but I wanted to be nice and told them that would be fine. Karen then mentioned that their buddy couldn't make it that day and asked if he could come tomorrow instead. I could feel myself getting a little uncomfortable, but I tried to stay polite. I told them to have their friend give me a call, and if the car was still available, I'd be happy to show it to him. But I reminded them that I wasn't holding it for anyone since it was first come, first served for whoever brought cash. As they were leaving, I made sure to repeat my policy again because I had a feeling this might become an issue. I clearly stated that I wouldn't hold the car for them, and if someone else came along with cash and wanted it, I would sell it to them. Karen said she understood, but the way she said it made me think she didn't really understand at all. Monday was busy. I had 3 other people come look at the car. The second person, a young guy who just started his first job, fell in love with it. He asked if he could bring the cash by Tuesday morning, and I said yes. Tuesday morning came and he showed up with $1,500 bills and a big smile. The sale took 10 minutes. Tuesday morning around 8 my phone rang. It was a buddy calling about the car and asking if he could come see it that day. I had to tell him I was sorry, but the car had already been sold. Before I could even hang up properly, the phone rang again. It was Karen, and she did not sound happy. She demanded to know why I had sold the car out from under them. I calmly explained that their buddy had never called the day before, and I had mentioned several times that it was first come, first served with cash in hand. I told her I had sold it to the person who showed up ready to buy. Karen got angry and said it wasn't fair. She insisted they were there first and should have gotten first dibs. I reminded her that I had been very clear about the rules and that I had told her I wouldn't hold it. She then accused me of doing something illegal and threatened to call the police and sue me. I tried to stay calm even though she was getting louder and more aggressive. I told her I was sorry she felt that way and wished her a good day before hanging up. When I came home for lunch, my answering machine was blinking like crazy. 12 messages. I hit play on the first one and heard Karen telling me that I thought I was so smart and that this wasn't over. The second message was worse. By the 4th message, she was using language I won't repeat here. I skipped ahead to the most recent ones, and that's when my blood ran cold. In her latest message, Karen suggested that maybe something should happen to my nice garage and that maybe it should catch fire one night when I was sleeping. I immediately called the police. The officer I spoke to was very professional and explained I had 2 options. They could arrest her right away, or they could issue a warning and a citation with a court date if she violated it. The officer asked if I felt unsafe right now, and if so, they would go arrest her immediately. I thought about it. She had kids, and as angry as I was, I didn't want to ruin their lives over this. I told the officer that if they could get her to agree to leave me alone, I would accept the citation option. The police went to her house. About an hour later, they called me back and told me she had agreed to cease all contact and that I would get a court date in the mail. At 2 in the afternoon, my phone rang again. It was Karen, but this time she sounded different. She said she wanted to apologize for earlier and that she was upset and had said things she shouldn't have said. She claimed she was really sorry. I wanted to believe her, but something felt off. I told her I appreciated the apology. Then she asked if I could call her back so she could apologize properly and maybe give her the name of the person who bought the car so she could try to buy it from them. The audacity was unbelievable. 12 minutes later, she called again asking the same thing. I told her no and hung up. At 10 minutes after 3, my phone rang one more time. This time, Karen had completely lost it. She called me names I won't repeat and said I had no right to sell that car. She insisted she needed it because she had kids and then asked how I would like it if something happened to my precious vehicles. Now she was bringing my family into it and making more threats. During her visit, she'd only seen one of our cars in the driveway. The other two were in the garage, but her comment about vehicles plural made it clear she was threatening all of them. I'd had enough. I called the police back immediately and told them she had called me again and made more threats. I said I wanted to press charges this time. The police were as good as their word. They got a warrant for her arrest that evening. The next day I found out she'd been charged with malicious use of a telephone, which apparently is a real crime. She had to go before a judge at 1 in the afternoon. The judge wasn't having any of her nonsense. She got fined $500, has to have a psychological evaluation within 30 days, and can't contact me or come within 500 feet of my property. About 3 weeks ago, my oldest son, who's 14, had a terrible accident. He was riding his bike down our street like he'd done 100 times before when he hit a patch of loose gravel and went flying. The sound of him hitting the pavement is something I'll never forget. When I ran outside, he was lying there crying, his leg bent at an angle that made my stomach drop. The emergency room visit confirmed what I already feared, a clean break in his tibia. The doctor said he'd be in a cast for at least 8 weeks, maybe longer. Watching my active, sports-loving kid suddenly confined to crutches broke my heart. He went from playing basketball every day to struggling just to get up the stairs to his bedroom. For the first 2 weeks, he barely left his room. He'd always been the leader among his 2 younger brothers, ages 10 and 8, and now he felt useless. I could see the depression setting in, and I knew I had to do something to help him feel normal again. That's when I came up with the pool idea. My son had always been a strong swimmer, and even with a cast, he could still enjoy being near the water. The community pool had shallow areas where he could sit safely, and his brothers could play around him. It wasn't perfect, but it was something. I spent days convincing him to give it a try. At first, he was embarrassed about the crutches and the cast, but eventually, his love for being around water won out. We packed towels, sunscreen, and snacks, and I made sure his crutches had good rubber grips so he wouldn't slip on the wet concrete. The morning we went was absolutely beautiful. The sun was shining, there was a gentle breeze, and the pool wasn't too crowded. I found us a good spot with some shade where my oldest could sit comfortably while still being close to the water. His younger brothers were practically bouncing with excitement. They'd been cooped up inside with their brother for weeks. Everything started out perfectly. The younger boys jumped in and started their usual games of Marco Polo and Keep Away. My oldest was actually smiling for the first time in weeks, calling out suggestions and cheering them on. I felt like maybe we were finally turning a corner. About an hour in, the younger boys started begging their big brother to get closer to the water. They wanted him to at least put his good foot in so he could be part of their games. He was hesitant at first, but I could see he wanted to join them. I stayed right beside him as he carefully maneuvered on his crutches toward the pool edge. He was doing great, taking his time and being careful. I was so proud of how he was handling everything. The younger boys were being patient too, which was unusual for them. It felt like we were all learning to adapt to this new normal. That's when she appeared. This woman, probably in her 40s, came walking along the pool deck. She had that look, you know the one, the kind of person who thinks the world should bend to her preferences. She was scanning the area like she owned the place, and when her eyes landed on us, her expression changed. She stopped walking and just stared at my son with his crutches and cast. Then, loud enough for half the pool to hear, she made a cruel comment about who was letting disabled kids around the area. The word she used was hurtful and completely inappropriate. I felt like I'd been slapped. My younger boys heard it too. I could see their faces fall. My oldest just froze, balancing on his crutches, suddenly looking ashamed of something that wasn't his fault. I turned around and asked her what she had just said, unable to believe someone could be so heartless. She turned to me with this awful smirk, like she was enjoying this. She repeated her cruel remark and asked if I had a problem with what she said. The casual cruelty in her voice made my blood boil. This was exactly what I've been worried about, someone making my son feel like he didn't belong, like his injury made him less than everyone else. I told her that she shouldn't say things like that because it was hurtful and disrespectful. She responded by asking what I was going to do about it, clearly challenging me to a confrontation. Before I could even process what was happening, she reached over and grabbed one of my son's crutches right out from under him. In one swift motion, she hurled it into the deep end of the pool. The sound it made hitting the water was nothing compared to the sound my son made as he struggled to stay upright. I lunged forward to catch him, but the damage was done. He was off balance, scared, and now had only one crutch. My younger boys started crying immediately. Other people around the pool were starting to stare, but nobody was moving to help yet. This woman just stood there with her arms crossed, looking satisfied with herself. She told us coldly that if we wanted the crutch back, we should go get it ourselves. I was trying to help my son regain his balance when I felt her hands on my back. The next thing I knew, both my son and I were plunging into the cold pool water. The shock of the water hit me first, but then pure panic set in. My son couldn't swim properly with his cast, and I had to keep him afloat while also trying to get us both to the edge. The younger boys were screaming now, thinking we were drowning. Thank God for the lifeguard and the other parents who jumped in to help us. Strong hands pulled us both out of the water, and someone wrapped towels around us. My son was shaking, partly from cold and partly from shock. The cast was soaked through, and I knew we'd have to get it checked at the hospital. But I was done being the victim in the situation. While other people were helping my kids, I noticed that pool security had grabbed Karen. She was struggling against them, still acting like she was the wronged party here. When I saw her being held there, something inside me just snapped. I've never been a fighter. I'm just a regular mom who drives carpools and makes lunches. But seeing my injured child pushed into a pool by this entitled monster triggered something primal in me. I broke free from the people trying to comfort me and ran straight at her. The security guard saw me coming, and honestly, I think they stepped aside on purpose. They'd seen what she did too. I hit her with everything I had. All the fear and anger and frustration from the past 3 weeks came pouring out. I wasn't thinking about technique or consequences. I was just a mother protecting her cubs. When the dust settled, she was on the ground with a clearly broken jaw, and I had a broken finger from where I connected with her face. But I felt better than I had in weeks. The police showed up within minutes. The pool had security cameras that caught everything, and dozens of witnesses were eager to give statements about what they'd seen. Karen was arrested and charged with assault on a minor, among other things. The officers told me I might face charges too for the beating I gave her, but honestly, I didn't care. Karen was actually banned from the community pool permanently. 2 years ago, I moved across the country to be with my fiancé. We'd been together since 2016, doing the long-distance thing, and finally decided to take the plunge. I left everything behind, my family, my friends, my support system, to build a life with him and his family. They welcomed me with open arms, or so I thought. About a year after moving in, I started having some serious health issues. After months of doctor visits and tests, I was finally diagnosed with something called postural orthostatic tachycardia syndrome. My body doesn't handle changes in position well, and my heart rate can spike dangerously high. I get dizzy, faint, have trouble breathing, and my blood pressure goes crazy. In the past 4 months alone, I've had to go to the emergency room twice, once in an ambulance because I collapsed at home. It's been tough adjusting to life with this condition. I have a wheelchair now for longer outings, and I've had to learn my limits the hard way. But I've been managing, and my fiance's family has been understanding about my bad days. Or so I thought. 3 weeks ago, I was sitting in the living room when my future mother-in-law came in with this excited look on her face. She was talking to my fiance about some family group chat I apparently wasn't part of. She told him excitedly that everything was booked for 4 days in Orlando the week before Thanksgiving, and that the boys were going to love Disney World again. My fiance looked uncomfortable and looked at me. He just agreed that it sounded great, but I could tell something was off. I sat there for a moment, processing what I'd just heard. A family trip to Florida, specifically Disney World, which had been on my bucket list for years, and I was hearing about it secondhand like some neighbor. I asked if we were going to Disney World. The silence that followed was deafening. My future mother-in-law looked at my fiancé like he was supposed to handle this awkward moment. She told me sweetly that this was really more of a family thing, just for her and the boys. The boys. Like I wasn't family after living here for 2 years and being engaged to her son for almost a decade. I asked her if I wasn't family too. She said of course I was family, but with my condition they just thought it would be better if I stayed home and rested. She explained that I knew how hot Florida gets and how all that walking at Disney World would just be too much for someone like me. Someone like me, like I was some fragile piece of glass instead of a person who happened to have a medical condition. I asked her if she meant they had planned an entire family vacation without even asking if I wanted to go. She told me that with my health issues, the heat and walking would be too difficult for me to handle. Later that night, I confronted my fiancé in our room. I asked him how he could let them plan this whole trip without including me. He said there was nothing he could do about it because it was already booked. I told him he could have spoken up when they were planning it and said his fiancé should be included. He insisted that it was going to be a lot of walking and heat, and he knew how that affected me. I explained that I wanted to make that choice myself. I had a wheelchair and could take breaks. I could stay at the hotel pool if I needed to, but he hadn't even given me the option. He said his mom had already made the reservations and there was no room. I told him to get another room and that I'd pay for it myself. I wasn't asking for charity. He said I was being dramatic and that it was just 4 days. Just 4 days. 4 days of being left alone in a house 2,000 miles from my family, with a medical condition that's already sent me to the ER twice recently. I asked him what would happen if I had another episode while he was gone. He said I'd be fine and could call 911 if I needed to. The way he said it so carelessly made my blood boil. I asked if I should just hope the paramedics get there in time while he's off having fun at Disney World. He told me not to be so negative and that nothing was going to happen. The next morning I tried talking to his mother directly. I told her I'd been thinking about the Florida trip and would really like to come along, even if I couldn't do all the activities. She said she didn't think that was a good idea. She explained that I knew how these things go with families, and sometimes it's just easier with fewer people. I was confused about what she meant by fewer people since I've been part of this family for 2 years. She said of course I had been, but this was really more about spending time with her sons, and I should understand that. I told her I really didn't understand. I paid rent here, contributed to the household, and had been with her son for almost 9 years. She said that rent was different from being actual family. There it was. The truth finally came out. After 2 years of living here, after being told I was family, I was just a paying tenant to her. I asked her if when she said I was family, she didn't actually mean it. She told me not to twist her words and said I was practically family, but this trip was for blood family only. I reminded her about when her other son brought his girlfriend of 6 months to their beach house last summer. She said that was different, but when I asked how, she didn't have an answer. Over the next week, I watched them plan their perfect family vacation. They talked about restaurant reservations, which rides to go on first, and what souvenirs to bring back. All of this happening around me like I was invisible. My fiancé tried to act normal, but I could see the guilt in his eyes. Still, he wasn't doing anything to fix the situation. Finally, 3 days before they were supposed to leave, I'd had enough. I told my fiancé I'd made a decision about the trip. He looked up from his packing and asked what I meant. I told him I was going to Florida too. His face went pale and he asked how I could do that. I explained that I'd booked my own flight and hotel room, and I'd be staying at the resort about 10 minutes from where they were staying. He said I couldn't do that because his mom would be furious. I told him his mom didn't get to control where I vacationed since Florida was a big state. He asked why I would do this. I explained that I wasn't going to sit at home alone for 4 days while my fiancé's family pretended I didn't exist. And frankly, if something happened to me medically, I'd rather it happen 10 minutes away from him than 12 hours away. He said this was going to cause problems. I told him good, maybe it should. The next morning, his mother found out about my plans. She walked into the kitchen where I was having coffee and angrily asked how I dared try to ruin their family vacation. I told her I wasn't ruining anything since I was going to be at a completely different hotel. She called me spiteful and manipulative. I explained that I was being practical. If I had a medical emergency, my fiancé could be there in 10 minutes instead of having to catch a flight back from Florida. She accused me of emotional blackmail. I told her no, this was me taking care of myself since no one else seemed concerned about leaving me alone for 4 days with a condition that had put me in the hospital twice recently. She said I was just trying to get attention. I explained that if I wanted attention, I would have demanded to stay in their hotel and follow them around Disney World. Instead, I was staying somewhere else and doing my own thing. She said not to expect them to babysit me down there. I told her I wasn't expecting anything from them because I never had. She walked out and I could hear her on the phone immediately, probably calling other family members to complain about how awful I was being. My fiancé tried one more time to get me to change my mind. He asked if I couldn't just stay home because this was tearing the family apart. I told him I wasn't tearing anything apart. I was just refusing to be treated like I didn't matter. He said I mattered and that I knew I mattered. I told him to act like it then. We all ended up flying to Florida, though they made sure to book different flights than mine. I spent 4 wonderful days at my resort, enjoying the pool, spa treatments, and room service. I even managed a few hours at Disney World one day, taking frequent breaks and using my wheelchair when needed. Meanwhile, according to the few texts I got from my fiancé, their family bonding trip was full of tension. Apparently, his father had questioned why I wasn't included in the first place, and his younger brother had made several comments about how weird it was that I wasn't there. On the last day, my fiancé texted asking if we could meet for dinner. We met at a restaurant halfway between our hotels. He looked exhausted. He told me his mom had been impossible the whole trip and was mad at everyone. I said that wasn't my problem. He explained that she felt like I had manipulated the situation. I told him that refusing to be left behind and taking care of my own safety wasn't manipulation, it was self-preservation. He said she thought I was trying to control the family. I explained that the only thing I was trying to control was my own life, and I was done letting other people make decisions about my health and safety without including me. He asked what happens now. I told him he needed to decide whether he wanted a partner or whether he wanted to keep letting his mother treat me like an outsider. When we got back home, the house felt different. His mother was cold and barely spoke to me. But something interesting happened. Other family members started reaching out. His father called to apologize for not speaking up. His brother's girlfriend sent me a long text about how wrong the whole situation was. It turned out that several family members had questioned the decision to exclude me, but his mother had convinced them it was for my own good because of my health condition. His aunt even called me directly. She said she had no idea I wasn't invited initially and thought I had chosen not to go because of my health. I told her no, I was never given the choice. She said that was terrible and apologized. She told me I was as much family as anyone else. 3 weeks later, his mother finally attempted what I think was supposed to be an apology. She said she hoped I knew they were just worried about my health. I told her that if she was worried about my health, She would have talked to me about it instead of planning around me like I wasn't there. She said they didn't want me to feel pressured to come if I couldn't handle it. I told her that wasn't her decision to make. She never fully apologized, but she did start including me in family plans again. I think she realized that other family members didn't support how she'd handled the situation. And now we have reached the end of today's stories. Thank you for watching, and see you next time.